Alright everyone, welcome to my Dark Souls 1 Beginner's Guide to Soul Level 1 Challenge Runs, using the just released Remastered edition. In this playthrough I'm going to take you through the game on the lowest possible level and I will explain to you in detail what I do to get through it. Now, Soul Level 1 runs are anything but rare. You can find dozens of SL1 playthroughs on YouTube, but usually they are merely about showing that the player in question is able to do it. But what my aim is with this playthrough is to present it as an actual walkthrough in the original sense of the word. Now of course, like all my videos, they are for anyone who is interested in watching. But this playthrough is specifically aimed at people who have only done quote-unquote regular playthroughs in Dark Souls and are interested in doing an SL1 run, but feel like they are not good enough to survive a challenge like that, or simply don't know what they should pay attention to. So my aim in this guide is to literally guide you through it. Meaning that I will explain in detail what I do, what gear I use and why, what tactics I use and why, what route I take, etc, etc. So simply actually explaining what I'm doing rather than merely showing it. However, this walkthrough is not all about having the easiest time possible. I will not be using actual cheese tactics, for example. After all, challenge runs are about the challenge and they are about improving as a player. It's not about finding every conceivable way to negate the challenge. So sure, you could try to do anything to improve your defenses, kill everything from a distance with a crossbow, or use a regular bow to lure enemies over so you can deal with any enemy one at a time, use NPC summons or whatever. Yes, you can have a much easier time in a run like this than what I will show you. But in my mind, that pretty much negates the reason for doing a run like this in the first place. Because you will want to have the feeling that you have become a better player after you finish the run than what you were before you started. Now, adding to that is that I put another restriction on this run: no Pyromancy. Even though I do pick up the Pyromancy flame, but that will be to trade it later on. So, as you know, the SL1 character in Dark Souls 1 is not the deprived class, but the Pyromancer for some reason. Now, the decision to not use Pyromancy is actually more of a preference than an actual restriction. I just like the game more without using spells, miracles, Pyromancy and other ranged weapons like handbows and crossbows. There is one exception where I'm going to kill a specific NPC from a distance with a crossbow and handbow combination, and I will also use a bow against the Bat of Chaos. Other than that, it's melee weapons only, perhaps the occasional firebomb or something. Now, the beginning of the game is obviously not going to differ that much from a regular playthrough, but of course the farther you get into the game, the more noticeable your small health and stamina bar are going to be. In that sense, the difference between a regular playthrough and a Soul Level 1 playthrough isn't all that different. It's why it's essentially the most common and basic challenge run there is. Because in the end, it's not really about playing the game differently, it's just that your margin of error is significantly smaller and that stamina management is much more important. On top of that, your stats limit what weapons you can use. Your favorite weapon may not even be available on this playthrough, or even if it is, it might not be the best choice to make. And that leads of course to the final difference, your damage output. Because you don't have the benefit of scaling, you will do less damage than if you could level your strength and dexterity stat. However, that will definitely not be as noticeable as you might expect. At least not on regular new game. After all, there are two elemental upgrade paths that don't rely on scaling at all. So when it comes to weapons, it's simply about having both a lightning weapon and a fire weapon. And as long as you will always prioritize upgrading your weapon as high as is possible at that stage in the game, which the specific route I'm going to take is specifically designed for, damage output is really not going to be that much of a problem. And I will talk about choice of weapons later on when we get to the first vendor in Undead Burg. So first about the version of the game. This is the just released remastered version and it's close to a fresh playthrough. I did a quick test run up to Taurus Demon and I also went down to Pinwheel to see if I could still do the more or less quickest descent into the Tomb of the Giants. You know, the part where you actually are in the dark. So with the exception of Pinwheel, you will actually see me earning trophies after Taurus Demon. So that will also mean that any possible changes, which there basically aren't really, in this remastered version, they will pretty much just be a surprise to me. So let's see if we encounter anything different. Now I do apologize in advance if things don't always go that well in this playthrough, because other than that quick test run, it's been quite a while since I played the first Dark Souls. So I am a bit rusty, I'm afraid. And this game autosaves, so I can't exactly do things over. So it may be that at some places it will be better to pay close attention to what I say than what I actually do. On top of that, because it's a guide, I do take speed into consideration. So I am trying to get through the game in a couple of hours. Obviously, if you do this for the first time, you will want to take things much slower. Speaking of speed, by the way, you can, contrary to what I will do, choose to wear some decent armor, so that you will sacrifice fast rolling for the ability to take some extra damage. However, I absolutely despise mid rolling, and in fact, after about half an hour or so, I will wear even less weight than what is required to keep under that limit, so that I can easily switch between gear without worrying about going over the weight limit. Now there are two instances where I will be using heavy armor as a strategy, and you can probably already guess when that's going to be. But I will come back to that when it's applicable. So the first things to do after the Asylum is basically just what you would always do. Pick up the items around here. But most of them aren't actually important. The only thing I really recommend is picking up the homeward bones, because those always come in handy. Then it's best to go human, and if you want, use an extra humanity so that you can immediately kindle the first bonfire you encounter in Undead Burg. Moreover, if you are in human form, your defenses are slightly higher. Now in Undead Burg itself, the thing you want to immediately pick up is the rubbish, which you can find when jumping down at the breakable barrels. We're going to need that for later on to trade for a titanite chunk. And well, now I'll shut up for a minute until we reach the next bonfire, and then we're going to talk about the best weapon to use on a Soul Level 1 run. Okay, time to get the equipment that I'll be using basically for the entire run. Now the hand axe is not bad or anything. In fact, my very first time doing SL1 in Dark Souls 1, I mainly used the hand axe, but it's not the optimal weapon. I have also tried the mace and the battle axe, but again, decent but not optimal. The best weapon for a Soul Level 1 character is the reinforced club. In fact, I will be buying two of them, so that I can have a lightning infused and a fire infused version. Unfortunately, I am a complete fucking moron, and I literally forgot to actually buy them. I'm that serious. So in a minute after leaving the vendor, you'll see me turn around when I realize that I didn't do my main purchase. Yeah, there's a reason why I'm not a speedrunner. Now when it comes to shields, my preference is the heater shield because of its low weight, and it has 100% physical defense and decent fire defense. However, I will be using several shields throughout this playthrough. And I also purchased a bow, which is actually not necessary, since you can find it later on. And also the resonance key, which is also not really necessary. You can use it to get the slumbering Dragoncrest ring, but that ring is also not really necessary. But a repair box can always come in handy, of course. By the way, speaking of bows, you don't have the stats to use a hand bow, but that only applies to damage output. For Bat of Chaos, it's not about doing damage, so that will be irrelevant. The point is you can still fire arrows with it. However, the light crossbow can be used, and I will use it to kill the NPC in New Londo. But again, I'm being forgetful and I forgot to pick it up. It's located in the building that you can jump to from on top of the roof. So unfortunately I had to come back to it later on. So, the reinforced club. What makes it so effective for SL1? Well, other than the fact that you have the stats to wield it. Well, simply put, it has a very high damage output when its damage is split between physical and lightning, or physical and fire. Also, it's a strike weapon, so especially two-handing it will stagger enemies in 1 or 2 hits. Ornstein will be a very good example of that. It also has a jumping R2 attack, which is great to immediately close the distance while attacking at the same time. Moreover, that's the strongest attack. And on top of all of that, it does bleed damage as well. It's not the most effective bleed weapon because it's slow, but it will definitely help you out, for example, against the Stray Demon, who has a pretty large amount of health. So, all in all, it's simply the best choice for Soul Level 1. The only downside is that it is rather slow, but it's either strength or speed. So in the end, it may be best to simply make every hit count. So sure, the hand axe is faster, but that doesn't mean it's better. Now, there is technically an even better weapon. Well, depending on the circumstances actually. But especially if you're going to take your Soul Level 1 character to New Game Plus and beyond. And that's the giant blacksmith hammer. Which we are going to get, by the way, because it upgrades with Twinkling Titanite, so you might as well upgrade it too. Only downside to that weapon is that you need to two-hand it. So that's why I also simply choose to carry 2 reinforced clubs, 1 for fire, 1 for lightning. Because the giant blacksmith hammer is a lightning weapon. Alright, make sure to get the gold pine resin in the treasure chest behind this building. Especially if you fear having trouble against the gargoyles, I will show you how easy they can actually be. And lightning pine resin will massively increase the amount of damage you will do to them. So even though I will not rely on armor for defense, at least hardly ever, what will mostly be enough when it comes to defense is wearing the blue tearstone ring that you can find behind the first Black Knight. That ring can often prevent you from getting one-shotted, which is in the end all you need. Because one thing that you will realize when doing a run like this is that having a long life bar is often not even that important. After all, as long as you can survive, you can heal. Of course, you need the opportunity to heal, so obviously a longer life bar is a major benefit. The point is simply that as long as you don't take 100% of damage, obviously you are still alive, so you can heal and undo the damage you just took. And the blue tearstone ring will more than once be an actual lifesaver that way. Make sure to lure the Black Knight to an open area so you actually have some room to fight him. Like many enemies in the first Dark Souls game, you can backstab them very easily, especially when they do their stab attacks. Also, if you are bad at parrying, Black Knights are probably the best enemies to practice against, because their attacks are very clearly telegraphed and most of them are pretty slow. And of course you absolutely want to kill this one, because he is guaranteed to drop a Titanite chunk. That is not a random drop, he will always drop a Titanite chunk. crystal lizard that is hiding in the barrel over here actually will determine the route I'm going to take. Well, at least to some extent. It can either drop a titanite chunk or large titanite shard. And even though you might think I would prefer the chunk, I actually want him to drop the large titanite shards. And I am in luck. The reason for that is because it will save me an extra trip to Blighttown. Which doesn't matter if you don't care about speed, but for doing this walkthrough it's definitely a good thing. Alright, Taurus Demon is up next, and it's obviously not going to be much different than on a regular playthrough. Because even if you do level, it's not going to make that much of a difference at this point in the game. Now, something weird by the way about Taurus Demon's design is that he has very peculiar hitboxes. Quite different than most other enemies in the game. And I'm talking about the hitboxes of his attacks. For example, his feet have hitboxes. So he can actually damage you merely by walking. Also, even when guarding, he can literally knock you over. Which doesn't do damage, but most other enemies cannot do this. And finally, when he stabs his axe into the ground, it counts as a lingering hitbox, which can hit you twice. Or hit you after dodging, or even after blocking. So in that way, it's a rather peculiar enemy. But for the most part, you will be fine if you just keep pressing up against him while holding your shield up. You might get knocked back or take a bit of damage from his feet, but as long as he doesn't knock you off the bridge, it really isn't that big of a deal. And if you really want, you can just lure him away from the ladder again and jump down on him a second time, or even a third time. Yeah, you know what, for the hell of it, let's talk to Solaire. You know, I actually always wondered why Solaire has become such an iconic character. Because, and this may be heresy, but I never really cared that much about him. I mean, you speak him for a short while and then he shows up in Anor Londo for a few more sentences. And then you see him again sulking in Asylum. And on my first playthrough I never went to that area with the sunlight maggot. So back then I never encountered him losing his sanity. But even if I did, it's not like anything happened that made you feel attached to his character. And if it weren't for other people, I wouldn't even know what Praise's son was about. Oh fuck, I just lost all my viewers now, haven't I? That's probably the Soul's equivalent of blasphemy. I suppose that pretty much everyone knows how to get past the dragon, especially based on how many people use the claymore on their first playthrough. But in case you don't, just stand over here and after a while the dragon automatically jumps down and you can run past him to the bonfire. Although you will probably need to get out of the way because of the fire. Alright, so I tried farming these soldiers for the hollow soldier waistcloth, but I was out of luck, they didn't drop it. So for now I'll just keep wearing the Pyromancer set. So let's continue. As you know, there is a Black Knight up this tower that we need to kill for a Titanite chunk. Which you could do now, but since we're going to come past here later on to get to lower Undead Burg, you might as well wait till then, given that your weapon will be at +5 by then, and there is very little room on top of the tower. So it's best not to spend too much time up there. Well, I think everyone and their grandmother knows this trick, but if you throw these alluring skulls into the fire, the armored pig will basically commit suicide. Whoops, well, if you throw near the edge, he will fall off. Fortunately, his ass just barely touched the fire to finish him off. Otherwise, he probably would finish me off. Okay, that's a random message. What could these fuckers be saying? Liar ahead. Yeah, of course, some smug lying about illusory walls. Then again, perhaps they did put some new illusory walls in the remastered version. That would actually be quite a pleasant surprise. Ah, who are we kidding, nothing has actually changed. Well, other than 60 frames per second, of course. And that is a very good thing. Ah, goddammit, I hate hitting the walls. I suppose this is why the winged spear was my favorite weapon during my first playthrough. Well, actually that's not the reason, of course. I don't remember that much from my first playthrough, it was quite a while ago. But I do know that I was using the Black Knight sword at first, but I absolutely sucked dick with a great sword. In fact, that's still my least favorite weapon category. But the moment I switched over to the winged spear, that was when that quote-unquote click happened, that so many players talk about on their first playthrough. You know, that moment when the gameplay suddenly falls into place and you start actually making progress in the game. Oh, by the way, here you have to be a bit faster than I was, because a Balder Knight will attack you from behind, and I was so slow that I ended up blocking with my weapon instead of my shield. So I almost died, not the smartest move you can take. Well, I did tell you, I am a bit rusty. Ah, nice. That was what I was waiting for. Now I can take off these Pyromancer clothes. I could of course go totally naked, but hey, what do you think I am? Some kind of pervert? Well, I am, but yeah. Alright, let's lure this knight outside so we have some room to fight him. And so that we don't have to worry about the channeler. By the way, something weird about this enemy that you may or may not already know. But you can actually parry him, but you can't riposte him. As far as I know, this is the only enemy type in the game that you can parry but not riposte. Yeah, it's weird. Maybe they originally intended to save this enemy to use as a Dark Souls 2 boss. You know, as one of the dudes in armor. I don't know. Anyway, here we have another example of how effective R2 attacks of the reinforced club can be to quickly close the distance while attacking at the same time. So first you can keep your distance to avoid the attack and then quickly counterattack by using the jump attack. Okay then, we got some Titanite shards and more than enough souls to buy the rest we need to maximally upgrade our weapon. Which is of course +5 at this point in the game. By the way, this is very important, buy a weaponsmith box. We want the ability to upgrade weapons without needing a blacksmith. And if it doesn't already seem obvious why, you will understand later on in the playthrough.
Yourself killed. Neither of us want to see you go hollow.
Alright, now we are ready to take on the gargoyles. Unless of course you want to get the Ring of Favor and Protection before fighting them. Which can easily be done. Just free Lotrac and take the elevator back to Firelink Shrine to kick him off the ledge. And then without sitting at the bonfire, go back to fight the gargoyles. And I specify not sitting at the bonfire so that you won't have to kill all those hollows again. Now in my case I'm not even going to bother freeing Lotrac. Because after you kill the gargoyles, he will automatically appear in Firelink Shrine. Only difference is that he won't give you a sunlight medal. Okay. Now, as you know, because of the channeler, that large group of hollows are going to be a pain in the dick. Now, on a normal playthrough, you can just kill him from ground level with a bow and arrows. But as I said before, on SL1, you can still use a bow to shoot arrows, but they simply will do hardly any damage. So, we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, you know, fuck this shit. I'm just going to run to the boss. Okay, time for the second boss fight. The gargoyles are actually much easier than you might think, especially with a +5 strike weapon with lightning bind resin. If you just dodge the first attack and two-hand your weapon, 2 hits will stagger him, and if you hit the tail, that will stagger him even longer. Remember that R2s close the distance immediately. With this amount of damage you can easily take him out before the second one even shows up. Then hold your shield up and strafe past the fire. And 2 R2 attacks will be enough to kill him. That's basically all there is to it. Basically, dodging the very first attack is half the fight done already. Okay, now let's climb the bell tower and actually earn a trophy. Yeah, it's been quite a while since my first playthrough in the original version of the game. What the hell? These guys followed me all the way up here? And now they are casually jumping off. Yeah, this game has some peculiar AI. Alright, now we're back in Firelink Shrine and we can finally kill Lord Shrek in accordance with the official Dark Souls canon. Well, at least I think it should be the canonical way for him to die. Given where he is sitting, if you kick him a couple of times, he will drop down into the ravine, and if you then quit the game and reload, the ring of favor and protection will be where he was sitting. And obviously this is a great ring for SL1, because it's the only way to increase your health and stamina bar. Okay, this is why I don't play soccer. Dude, will he just fall down already? Well, that wasn't elegant, but yeah, it worked. Alright then, now let's upgrade our Estus Flask at the Firekeeper, and then we can go and make our way towards lower Undead Burg to fight the Capra Demon. But that will have to wait until the next episode. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, tell your own experiences in the comment section and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you all back in the next episode.